Philomythia podcast.
Sweet.
Welcome.
Sweet.
Welcome.
I love because I listen to every episode like 3 times by the time it's done and it releases. And my favorite thing that you say on the episode 4 that just dropped, not just dropped when this gets released, but when we're recording it, is you go, welcome, part 2 to welcome. It's so funny. I had that loops in my head. Welcome, part 2 to welcome.
Part 2 to welcome. Somebody else, I think Amy, my sister, shout out to Piper's Peonies for...
Shout out. She makes badass stuff. That thing she posted, I think today or yesterday, that's like the mug and the pin. It's really cool. Super cool. Like, she makes cool shit.
I'll take some pictures of my mug that I made at a thing we did. And then me and you are getting custom ones.
Oh, we are.
This, for the podcast.
For this, we're going to do some giveaways.
Yeah, we'll do some stuff in the future with that.
Stuff.
But yeah, shout out to the sis. She's great. But she said something to me. She messaged me about something one of us said. She's like, you guys are so ridiculous. And she quoted one of us. And I was like, so funny. I totally remember saying that.
Was it about dice flagellation?
I don't even know. It was from, she was talking about episode 4, something we said on 4.
Yeah, that's on 4.
Oh, is it?
Oh, yes. Oh,
that's funny.
Yes.
I don't know if it was that. That's so
there's like 20 minutes of us talking about like different types of dice. You go into like, what if we put it in like the thing that shoots baseballs?
Oh, right. Yeah. See, what's super crazy about that to me is I have a few, like just obviously a few people will say something to me about, they'll be like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And in my head, I'm like, what are they talking about? What did one of us say?
I don't remember.
I don't know if this is going to get picked up, but like there's a car alarm going off in my background right now.
I don't hear anything.
Great.
So
it shouldn't come through.
Yeah, we'll fix it in post, as the professionals say.
It might. But,
yeah.
So I got to talk about this.
Okay.
And how me and you even will talk about things on here. Mm-hmm. And then I will come to Eric and be like, hey, bro, have you ever heard of this? And he'll be like, yeah. It's one of my favorite authors. I talked about it on the podcast. And I was like, you did? And you're like, yeah. And then I heard it a little bit later because I went back and listened. I think it's on episode 4, actually.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, shit, there it is. He totally talks about it.
Yeah.
But so I've been reading that Hideo Kojima book. Hideo Kojima. Sorry.
However you say it. We're butchering it, but we're Americans. That's kind of our
I've been reading it and I've been getting further in it. Mm-hmm. And you know me, again, I'm a huge Metal Gear fan. Huge Metal Gear fan. Love it. And in there, one of the books he puts is the collaboration that him and this guy did writing the book based on Metal Gear Solid 4.
Okay.
Guns of the Patriots. And he like basically goes off about the book and how amazing it is and how this author created such a good depiction of the game, but making it a book. And there's more, like there's a whole thing about it, but so I was like, oh my God, really? So I went and then I got the sample on my Nook and started reading it, and it fucking sucked me in, dude.
Nice.
Like it sucked me in. I was like, I feel like I'm playing the game again. And but it was really good. But that just that's
awesome.
Yeah, and the one author, you say her name again, his name. Her name is?
China, it's a he. China Mieville. Yeah.
I have to read some of those books now.
He'll blow your mind. That's the thing why I mention New Weird to you a lot, because you love things like Hideo Kojima, and he's basically like, those video games are new weird. They get very strange. and then everything goes weird and sideways. And I mean, these books are totally that vibe. Like, what is happening? And it's awesome. Yeah. It's really, really cool.
So that's, I'm going to have to read them now.
Yeah.
Have to.
He's really interesting in particular because he's like a full-on socialist, and he has very interesting views on politics. So the way that influences his fiction writing is really interesting to me. So you get these different views on rulership and government. Like, if you want your mind truly blown, Embassy Town is the one to read. That's the one that's
I want to read The City and the City, and then Embassy Town. Those are the two that stand like I gotta read those.
Yeah. Perdido Street Station, just as a piece of writing, for me is probably his masterpiece. Like, it's really good.
I also have to read that Book of Flying.
Oh, I love Book of Flying. We've talked about it.
I know, because I love it. Listening to the podcast, just hearing you talk about it, I'm like, I'm going to have to read that.
It's like, and I don't know if we've talked about, we've both seen Dune. I mean, we might have talked about it last week a little bit, but like, I had an experience with that movie that went beyond just like mentally being like, oh, that's cool. It was like emotional and subliminal in this weird way. Like, when you meet somebody and you just like them, you have this reaction, this visceral reaction. Every time I read this book, that's why it's my favorite book, I have the same experience. Somehow this book recreates like that first time, and it's always magical. It's always just as good. And I don't know how he did it. Like, I don't understand.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really, really. So that book's super close to my heart. It's really good. Really good.
I'm going to have to read it.
Yeah.
And some of our listeners recommended some stuff.
They did. Yeah.
Yeah. One of them recommended some books that I've read. One of them, you've read a few of them.
I read the first trilogy. Shout out to Sean, by the way. What's up, dude? Thanks for bringing those up.
And then somebody else, I don't know if he wants me to say his name out on here, so I'm not going to.
Yeah, that's fine.
But he recommended this other trilogy, so I've got that on.
What was that? What was that one?
It's written down somewhere, man.
Go get it. The other books, the first books we were talking about is the Farsier Trilogy. That's Robin Hobb, and she is a phenomenal author. She's so good.
The Assassin's Apprentice.
And she's vicious, man. She will put her characters through the ringer. Like, those three books were traumatizing in the best way, but they were so painful to get through for me. Like, it was so rough.
Oh, even the first one, like the guy, the main character gets fucked.
And it's each time it's like cubed in the, suffering cubed in the second one, and then suffering square, or suffering squared in the second one, and then suffering cubed in the third one. Like, each one gets way worse. It's crazy.
Yeah, they seem heavy books. I'm sorry, man.
Our mutual friend, we can just put the other books all put in the doobly-doo notes.
In the doobly-doo.
Doobly-doo. I've been doing the chapters for the episodes. So the end, like when we're wrapping up, is called our doobly-doo thoughts. It's like the tail end.
Nice.
Yeah. Tail end of the podcast. So should we get into this topic?
No, not yet. I got more things to say.
Not yet. Ian's going to say thanks.
So it's heavily debated. I don't actually know that. This is more of Eric's thing, but I'm actually just stealing the segue to the 3 pillars of play.
Oh, nice. That's what I was going to ask about.
Yeah, I know. Nice. I was stealing your thunder.
That's fine. Steal away.
I actually don't. This is not something I'm as familiar with as you are. And
well, let's talk about what the 3 are and kind of give our listeners some grounding, because a lot of people apparently don't know what we're talking about when we talk about D&D. So if you have questions about things, please ask us, because we're happy to
hit us up.
Talk about it. Mainly, we're trying to get people to DM, because that's our passion, that's our focus. But if people want to know about, okay, well, I don't even know how to play the game, we can talk about that for sure. I have no problem doing that, or kind of going through things. In D&D, they talk about there being 3 pillars of play. I would call them modes, because pillars kind of seems like this static thing, like it's just all, it's a noun, it's always there, where it's more about the motion of the thing. So they talk about combat, exploration, and social. And basically, so you have the pillar of combat, which is it's a big thing in D&D for sure. There's lots of rules for it. It's not the crunchiest of systems, but it's fairly crunchy.
Some love combat.
Yes. Some I mean, combat that is where D&D came from, like wargaming. For sure. Know? So it's definitely got its own tradition. Exploration. So it seems like exploration is, you can interpret it a lot of ways. It could be hex crawling, which is like you have a bigger regional map of like the kingdom you're in, and then you put little hexes on top of it. And basically each hex has different things the PCs can explore. So they can just kind of, it's what we call a sandbox. So you can just, PCs can go where they want and explore things, and use the DM, have things prepared for them to fight or encounter, or dungeons, all that fun stuff. So but especially now that you've run some sessions, and I've run some sessions, it seems like a lot of times there's other situations that fall outside of those three pillars. So my one thing I've been thinking about is the one shot.
Did you say the third pillar?
I didn't. I'm sorry. The third pillar is...
I was like, what?
Wait, there's only two. Third pillar is social. So anytime you're interacting with NPCs or like...
What does NPCs mean, Eric?
Oh, it means non-player character.
Oh.
So all the characters that the DM embodies, essentially. So beautiful. Like the shopkeeper and the city guard and the big bad evil guy, which is the term we use for main villain, also known as the BBEG. BBEG.
I gotta tell you, when I first started seeing that term,
Beeg,
didn't get it. I was like, what?
Right.
Why?
Yeah.
That's what we do.
I didn't get it either, but I always look that shit up. Every time I see like an acronym or an abbreviation, I'm like, what is that? I'll look it up.
Oh, I do it. I'll do it all the time, too.
I'm like, oh, big bad evil guy? Mean? That's dumb, but I get what it means. So
SMH? What is that?
Right. Yeah, SMH. Oh, shake my head. Okay.
No, that's obvious.
So those definitely seem like modes of play for sure.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about like the one shot we did a couple episodes back, and how you said you set up the whole kind of, once I got out of the town, it was kind of like a puzzle. So it wasn't really exploration. It was more like you're in puzzle mode almost. I think about our Sunday campaign. I had some modes where you guys had to figure out puzzles and put like runes in the right place. So I don't know if it'd be a mode of play. I mean, it's probably semantics, but it seems like you're using different resources.
I agree, and I think that would be another mode of play, but I would imagine most people would want to classify that as exploration.
You could.
Maybe even, or social. So, I mean, people are going to argue to put that in one of the modes, but
sure,
I think puzzles should be in its own mode.
Well, let's say this. Puzzles. Let's say that these are what works for us, even if other people are like, no, that's dumb. It's like, well, that's fine.
Dumb. You guys are dumb.
So we have puzzle mode, guys, and I want a shirt that says puzzle mode now.
What's the God, that's I don't know what show it is, but there's a show and they want to make a bar called Puzzles or something like that.
Oh, that's How I Met Your Mother.
Okay.
Every time they get really drunk, they want to turn the bar downstairs into a place called Puzzles. And one time, I think it's a New Year's, they actually do. They actually turn it into puzzles for a day.
I watched that whole show, and
so did I. Yeah.
Anyway,
good.
But yeah, you were saying something. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. So that one seems pretty valid. I would say chases seem like their own thing too.
Yeah.
Like you have initiative and you're usually running through a space, but you're not really being social and you're not really in combat. It's a weird, fuzzy other thing. And
yeah, I would bet people would argue it to be in combat, but why would you put that in combat?
Right. You're not actually fighting. You are chasing. Right. There's contending. Right. And the interesting thing about chases is they can only last for so long, because once your constitution runs out, you can't dash anymore. Like you're suddenly hobbled, So for those of you who aren't as familiar, Constitution is kind of like the score we use for like how healthy you are. It's like if your Constitution is higher, you have more hit points. You're harder to kill. You can run longer. You have more endurance.
You can drink more usually.
Yeah, you can drink more. So dwarves are typically known to have really high Constitution. Unless you're in the Lord of the Rings movies where elves apparently have super high constitution and dwarves are fucked. So that one seems, again, I don't know if I'd call it a pillar or mode. I don't know if maybe because it just doesn't happen as frequently as like combat in most campaigns. The other one I thought about too is planning. So like how much time PCs spend planning their quests. Like it seems like that's almost its own mode of play because it's usually all the players arguing with each other.
Oh man,
that's all it is.
There are times where I love it, and there are other times where I hate it. I guess it just depends on what you're arguing about. When it's
really fun to plan when you have people kind of on the same, no pun intended, page, and you're doing kind of the yes and thing, even if it's implicit, where you're kind of like, ooh, what if we did this? And then somebody else is like, yeah, and we do this as well. Like you're adding on to each other's stuff. But when you're just straight up arguing and someone's like, we should do this. And someone else is like, no, because of this reason and this reason. And then a third person's like, I think we should do something completely different. That makes me want to go to sleep.
That's so funny.
You know what I'm talking about.
That seriously reminds me of what I consider one of my favorite sessions. Eric hated that session. Are you talking about the Bone and Dodd? Yeah, absolutely.
I hate it.
I know. And I loved it because I thought it was humorous, but there was at a point where I was like, okay, this is going on too long. Shut up, everybody. Let's just do this.
This is getting taken way too seriously.
Right. Let's just go.
Yeah.
But there was a good 30 minutes of us arguing kind of in character.
It was like 45 minutes. It was a long
I'm saying
time.
there was about 30 minutes. It was about an hour of it, but 30 minutes of it was super great.
Right. Gotcha.
And super fun in character arguing about make-believe shit. And then
here's another thing
30
too.
Minutes, it got crazy.
Right. Do you remember what kind of happened right when things took a turn? One of our players was late and then he showed up and another one of our players like said something to get him on his side. And so then it was like full tilt.
Someone made an art. It was
Shaddad. I'll use the character name. So Shaddad showed up and then Tyne was like, hey, you can get because remember he wanted the weapons, like that's before he had all the cool shit, right? Before
he wanted the hammer.
Yeah, so he's like, you can get this. He's like, oh, so it was. It was. After that, it was like hard. It was scrum.
It was insane. It was super fun to me because I liked that, but Eric hated it. So that would be. I think that I would put the planning probably in social.
It's definitely social. Right. It is. But the difference to me is like social's kind of the PCs interacting with the DM kind of through NPCs or monsters. And it is also them, but a lot of times it's them with the world, where planning is just the PCs headbutting each other verbally. Hopefully not physically, but they're just yelling at each other. So maybe that's splitting hairs. But for me, it feels like, as a DM, my job is totally different in the two. I'm doing totally different things.
I could see that for sure.
That's just me then. And here's one I'm putting in here because I'm going to start working on a homebrew campaign where this is going to kind of replace combat. So performance, meaning like some kind of performance on stage or deception. So music, juggling, ventriloquism, whatever it is. So I don't think most games have performance in it enough for it to be a thing, but I want to think about it as its own mode of play, because I'm going to do a homebrew campaign called Bard Star instead of Rockstar and all.
That's
right. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that's coming like this summer. This coming up summer, hopefully.
Summer 22. Bard Star.
2022. Bard Star.
So basically,
it reminds me of Brave Star when you say it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good. Maybe we'll put replace the A if we did a logo. Replace the A with a star. That's kind of like the
make the Bard star
streak
in the same font as Brave Star.
Oh, that's so good. We have to do that. So for the listeners, every character has to play a bard, which is one of the classes, and they usually play an instrument or they recite poetry. So they have magic, but it works through art and expression usually. And like I played a bard in the one shot, like super fun.
Oh yeah.
Kind of social characters, talking about the three. If you think about classes they're good at different pillars a lot of the time. So the party is a band of bards, and they are basically playing from city to city until they get to like this big battle of the bands. And that's like the end of the campaign, is them trying to win the battle of the bands. And most of the people we play with are all musicians. So I'm going to make them like act out some of their stuff. So like singing lines or doing little drum things.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be really good. So I want to figure out how to make performance like as engaging as combat, like make it fun, kind of copying Rockstar, the video game, in terms of the tension is swaying the audience. Like maybe do some, which we should talk about in a little bit, but do some clocks from Blades in the Dark rather. So that was my last one. So it seems like there's some other things that kind of work in this. What do you think?
As in the three modes?
Yeah. Is there anything you feel like that you encounter as a GM that's not necessarily one of the three pillars?
Anything. I mean, let me think.
Again, you can be like, no, the three pillars is great.
I don't know. What you've said kind of outlines some of the things. What I was going to say is, just to give, the idea of these new DMs or people new to this, the episode that was released a little bit ago with us playing a session, I would say is a lot more, I mean, if you're going to just use the three modes, I say it's more exploration and combat. I didn't do a lot of social.
There was some at the beginning, though. Sure.
There was a little bit. And there was on the other path.
There was a lot more social.
Part of the story, there was more social.
Yeah, for sure.
Just to highlight, when you're playing, including any amount of any of those pillars is going to, be good, because you want to hook any of your players. Some of them are going to love combat. Some of them are going to love these other aspects, and the little subtleties that kind of lie between, like puzzles and planning. These are things I feel, that kind of naturally, well, the puzzles not really, but planning just is going to happen in betwixt all of that. But the puzzles is also another way to hook your players and to really, you'll give players a nursery school puzzle.
Right.
And when there's 4 or 5 people trying to figure it out, sometimes they will sit and stare and go crazy and can't figure it out.
Yep.
Or you'll throw them some crazy puzzle and they'll just be like, oh,
nail it.
This.
Oh, I grew up with this.
Yeah. Jerry, our buddy, that we were doing a forged thing, and I had these like puzzles, and I thought I would make it easy. So I only put one, because I was like, oh man, I don't want them to like really get stuck on this.
Right.
So I put the puzzle up and I only did this one type, and I accidentally revealed it to Jerry right before the other people. And I hadn't even started the timer. I hadn't done anything. I showed the page and Jerry goes, I got it. And I was like, what?
Problem
He's like,
solved.
I can do it. And I was like, okay. I mean, he's like, okay, hold on. Okay, it's done. And I was like, all right, I guess we're running with it.
Yeah.
Because I had even like totally steamrolled the party into the trap because one of our players was not at the table at that time. Do you remember how Shay's character was crawling all over the walls?
Oh yeah, and Jerry was flying, I think, and they kept.
Well,
somebody kept getting hit by traps because they kept.
That was Shay.
Yeah, he was in the same kind of, like he was the same distance off the floor, let's say, the whole time. So there was like a bunch
and
of
he
traps.
just kept getting hit. And he kept crawling up, but then he left the table to go somewhere for a second.
Right.
And you and Jerry were in the room I wanted you to be in, but Shay wasn't. And I was like, since he's not at the table, Shay went in there. And then we were like, okay. And I was like, yeah. And then the trap went off and Jerry solved it in 0.3 seconds.
It was really anticlimactic. You're like, and there's
it
this
was
trap.
super
I figured it out.
anticlimactic.
What?
I was
I'm
like,
done.
shit.
We got it. I figured it out.
But yeah, it was, but again, that's, you try to throw in these types of things for your players to hook them and make it a little break up because I think that's what planning in puzzles does. It kind of breaks up those pillars.
Right. Well,
so you're not just stuck in those modes.
right. Puzzles
I keep saying pillars,
interesting because your players have to figure it out with their quote unquote stats. The characters don't figure it out. So you're switching, like the player has to, like if you put a riddle there.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do it where like you roll for it and then you reveal it on a good roll. You could do that. But usually when I've done it,
like a clue.
Yeah, it has clues. Roll. Yep. Which I think I've done clues. It's been a while. But a lot of times it's like, nope, you have to figure it out. Like, okay, think your thoughts.
Yeah, you gave us one puzzle on the Sunday campaign that was like that skull puzzle.
Yep.
And that one just made sense to me, so I figured that one out.
You figured that one out fast. I was like, ooh, I was worried about it. It was awesome. So yeah, I like thinking about, okay, 3 pillars is really cool conceptually, but it's a little simplistic, I think, when you actually get on the table. There are other situations that pop up. So it's fun to think about.
Well, then I think that it almost like, you almost want to call it like the scale of play, because there's the 3 main colors, if you will.
Right. Kind of a spectrum of play.
And then there's kind of like grades in between that kind of join those together that, could be anything. I mean, even anyone doing their own homebrew may have, other little pieces that they do in their games that we're just like, we don't even know about that.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
cool.
Yeah, it makes sense for sure. Maybe kind of Venn diagram like, where you could think of chases as kind of somewhere in between combat and an exploration or something. It's kind of a mix of the two. So you kind of have these fused together pillars, or it's like a little piece of both, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I like that.
So changing topics, one thing we should probably talk about is we finally have gotten to play Blades in the Dark a couple of times.
Oh yeah.
And so maybe, because we keep talking about how we want to play that, maybe we should talk about that a little bit. What have your experiences been with that?
Oh, I had a blast, man. It was super fun. Obviously, going from Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition to Blades in the Dark is there's a lot of stumbling because you're very used to playing a different way, so it's hard to break the habit of that.
Right.
That part of it, but once you really start doing it, it becomes a lot funner. All of the mechanics within Blades are super fun. At least I think so. And it's, I would definitely play Blades just as much as I play D&D because they both satisfy a certain thing.
Right.
And I really love playing D&D, and I also really love playing Blades in the Dark. It's a lot of fun. And I bet the more games we play, the more it's gonna be like, oh, a lot of these tabletop RPGs are a lot of fun. They have different aspects to them that make them different, and there's a reason they're popular in different ways. So
right. Well,
but Blades was
great.
Go ahead. Sorry, go on. Yeah. No, I was just saying Blades is great. That's the end.
It's really cool. My kind of low key dream is like try out all the RPGs that seem interesting and take all the best rule features from all of them and make my own homebrew. Like obviously the clocks. What?
Make your own kind of game.
Make your own tabletop RPG that's this weird amalgam of all the things you think are cool. Because like I love, I guess we should back up. So just for those who don't know, Blades in the Dark is another tabletop RPG. Similar in D&D in the sense that you roll dice and you have a character in a world. and you can get more powerful, but that's about where it ends. So in D&D, your party, so like the group of characters that are adventuring the world, spend a lot of time planning, and like a lot of those plans it's kind of useless because they don't really know what you're getting into. So you can only kind of like suppose. Where Blades in the Dark is much more like a TV show where like you start it off and then suddenly when you do a score, so you're a bunch of criminals kind of in this dark underworld, and you're doing something like you're robbing a bank, like you cut right to the action. So you're bursting into the bank doors saying, this is a robbery. So it gets right to the action. So it's much more like a TV show, I would say, in that sense, where the DM is kind of editing the story. What were we going to say?
And the players are the ones. And I was going to say it's very much like a show, like a TV series where the GM is like you said, the editor, and the players are the ones that are really constructing what's happening.
Right.
They say what they're doing, and then the GM establishes kind of how hard it is to do and how good the outcome could be.
Right. And then you... Sorry, go ahead.
No, and then you roll dice.
Right.
And as, then the dice determine kind of how good that situation plays out.
Right.
And then the DM kind of gives you that part.
Right. So kind of describes, okay, what happens. Ooh, that you do it, but there's some consequences to it, and here's the consequences. But the cool thing is that the players have much more to do with the creation of the story, where D&D is much more one-sided. Like the DM is the arbiter of the world, and Blades in the Dark, you're kind of creating it together. So the players can do flashbacks to kind of solve problems creatively, like when they're in the thick of it. So that's the trade-off with not being able to plan at the beginning. And they can also, like, if I say, oh, so you weren't able to dodge out of that, there's somebody coming at you with a knife, you can also be like, well, I want to resist that. So you can find ways to reduce the harm or bad things that do befall you.
Like, you get stabbed, you can resist that stab and try to not take the harm. Yeah. Because there's no hit points like in Dungeons and Dragons. Nope. It's more of a degree of how much injury you've taken.
Right.
And when you take too much injury, you die.
Yeah.
You also have stress, and that's kind of like a resource you use to get more dice for your roll, or to like push yourself, as they call it.
Try to up your chances of success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's fun. Like, as an example, we're the group that we're playing with. We're a group of assassins, and we got hired to do a job, and we came to this locked door, and we could tell that there was, like, we were pretty sure one of the bosses that we need to kill was in that room. The door was locked, wasn't it?
So the door that was locked went to an empty room, but that connected to another room, and that door was open, or it was unlocked, rather. Yeah.
So there was a number of ways to get in there, but what ended up happening is one of our players decided to do a flashback and talk about the plan of throwing himself as if he's tied up, being thrown through the door, and one of our other players had a disguise on to look like one of those gang members, and they were going to have this whole moment of look who I found, this guy skulking around our base. And they were like starting to get in there and do all of that. And then my character came in and threw a knife at the boss and hit him. And while all of this is like going down, one of our other players goes, I want to do a flashback. And everyone's like, okay. He's like, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set up bombs underneath where everyone's fighting. Because the plan was you guys needed to do a distraction so I could set up the bombs. And we were all like, holy shit. oh man, he's setting up bombs. And next thing you know, one of the other players in the room now, because of a scenario he's in, has a bomb strapped to his chest. So all of these things, none of us knew those things were going to happen until you're in the thick of it, and you use these flashbacks to confront these scenarios.
Yeah, it's a way to plan in the moment, so you know what the situation specifically is. And so since you're a badass criminal, you planned exactly for this thing.
Yeah, you were ready for this.
You were ready for it,
and it was a lot of fun. It took us a while to get there, because we had to go through character creation, and then we created our assassin crew, but in the end, when we actually did it, we got through a whole
score.
Round of play. Yeah, a whole score and the downtime.
Yeah, and they blew the building up. It was insane.
Yeah, it was insane. It was
crazy.
It's a big problem.
Yeah, well, it could be. The weird thing, because I ran the game, so I was the game master. I was the GM. So they don't call them dungeon masters in Blades in the Dark. We'll probably slip and say DM a lot, but it's not technically correct. I didn't have to do any planning. So literally, this is a pure sandbox game where the world and the city of Duskfall exists, and they're basically this gang of criminals who are trying to like expand and stake their claim in the city. And this city is filled to the brim with other gangs and stuff. So I just kind of keep track of how the city reacts to their choices. So it's quite different, where like my Monday campaign for D&D is a big damn quest. So there's a story arc and there's a big bad and things are desperate, but it's, it's more narrative. So it's very interesting being like, okay, I've read the rules. What do you guys want to do? We want to kill people. Man. Okay, let's, so here's some jobs for you. Which one would you like?
I'm so changing the subject real quick to address the a Monday campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait till we can actually like talk about it.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? Because what just happened was really cool.
It is really cool. I'm excited about it.
Like, yeah, me too. Like, and I'm not, again, like we've talked about, I'm not even really playing.
Right, but you've been there. Listening. You're part of the group, but in a weird, like just emergent way. It wasn't really planned. Right.
I've also had to play a bunch of people's characters. Just to like, they're like, oh, they're not here. You want to play them in combat? Sure.
I'll say it's.
And that.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
I'll say it's really useful to have somebody who's not playing but just wants to hang out, who knows D&D, to like help the DM out with things. That does help a lot. Oh, yeah.
Having an assistant that's familiar.
Yeah, like an R2D2 type situation where they're like, hey, can you just do this for me? And they're like, fine. It helps.
It's quite convenient.
But that campaign is it's just kind of special to us. So it's pretty cool, but it's very like dire. So I've made it as epic as I possibly can, and it's very weird, and I played around with things to make it very strange and kind of creepy. So when it's done, we'll talk about it on the podcast. And I do can I have actual play of that if people want to see it? Most of it's probably pretty boring, so I would cut it down. So you're not listening to us like read rule books and stuff. But if people want to hear it, we can put it out for sure.
Yeah, and I think pretty sure I want to go through and edit just clips of our Friday games that we've recorded over the years, just to give people little samples of, it would be cool, pieces of things.
That's just such an undertaking. Like there's hours. Yeah,
exactly. There's hundreds of hours. That's what I mean.
Of content now.
I would probably just pick like 4 episodes and listen to them,
right? And
find a clip in those ones and be like, okay, here's a clip, and then wait a while, find another clip.
I think if you could find like some of Jerry's polymorph things, or like once Zephyros shows up, because we're doing Storm King's Thunder. So Zephyros shows up to like Yak Folk. It probably has some awesome stuff in there.
Oh too. Man, it would be so funny. Would be to find the session of the Yak Folk village.
Oh my God.
It's and so go, insane. Let's let's edit this. Let's edit this and show the world that the yak folk are terrible.
I mean, I'm sure we can do that. One day. That's a lot of digging. That was like a year and a half ago or something like that. That was a while ago.
I think about a year probably.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. But I definitely have when I think we've already talked about it, that I have that recording of one of our last sessions when we were in person.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah, have you listened to it?
Yeah. No, I'm scared to.
Just stop.
It's so long.
Just put your fear aside and just put it on and listen to it. You probably hate some of it, but you might find some good.
I bet you.
jewels.
I bet you. I get mad at somebody on that recording.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
Say something mean, because that happens sometimes. I don't mean for it to. I'm sorry.
Sometimes it happens. Yeah. So we want to do. We'll release some actual play. Some people won't want to listen to it at all, and that's totally fine. Yeah. It's going to be an extra thing rather than this is all you get this week kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, some extra
and I think
little
that
snippets.
And I think that we did that last week 2 weeks ago. You got 2 episodes.
It was actually, I think it was more than 2 weeks ago because it was before the trip. Pretty sure.
No, but I'm saying it's going to be released.
Oh, you mean when
2 weeks.
Right.
Like, so I think they'll hear that one 2 weeks from the recording of this.
So 2 weeks. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
and here's the thing.
This will be super confusing.
Yeah. If you go ahead.
No, I'm just going. Is it 2 weeks? What?
Right. But it'll already be out by the time this is out, so everyone will be really confused. Yeah,
exactly. This is going to be a horrifying conversation.
Past maths right now. Are you not entertained? Are you? If you want to know what actual play is like, we can put some links on. The really popular choice is Critical Role. It's definitely well done, and they're voice actors. But there's a lot. If you just look up like D&D actual play, there's a bunch.
Yeah, there's so many.
If people want recommendations, we can go through some. I don't want to say any right now because I need to go back through and find the names. But there are some good ones, including some good like Blades in the Dark and Pathfinder and some different games too.
Ooh.
So,
speaking of, I would love for Jerry when he wants to be the GM for us.
Absolutely.
I would love for him to be like Starfinder, man. Let's play it.
Yeah, I'm totally down. Is he because he said his like campaign idea to you, right?
Well, his main thing is he wants to do something super sci-fi.
Right.
Like he wants it to be sci-fi.
So yeah, Starfinder is definitely a good option. And
whatever his like story is, whatever he wants to do, I'd say, dude, check out Starfinder, learn how to play it.
I would say Starfinder, but also Numenera.
Is that a sci-fi one?
Well, it seems fantasy because basically the 9th world is Earth, but you've had 9 great civilizations, and the one we're in now in reality is supposed to be the 3rd. So this is thousands of years in the future. So there are self-aware satellites that people have worshipped as gods, and there's technology that's so advanced but so ancient nobody knows how it works. It's like magic. So it's this very crazy mix of science fantasy just because it's so far in the future. And that's the one with like the ciphers. So that's like a one-use magic item. I don't know the mechanics of it because I haven't played, but that's also another one where the DM or the GM, their role is very different. They don't roll any dice at all.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, so they're much more focused on the narrative and that kind of thing. So at some point,
I'm interested now. Maybe that is a good idea for Jerry to check that one out.
Yeah.
We should slowly
ease him into it.
He's probably going to hear this.
He might. Who knows if he'll listen to the whole thing? We tend to go on for a while, so we're cloaking clues in the middle of the sauce for the dedicated listeners.
For the people who listen.
Yeah. I think I put the PDFs up for people to look at just to see if they.
Okay, cool.
want to play it, but that's up there, right up there with Blades. Like I wanted to play that one for a while too.
Yeah, I'll check it out too.
So that one is going to be more intuitive, kind of like different, like Blades, where Starfinder is going to be hardcore, like
D&D,
crunchy rules, extra crunchy. Like D&D's like soft crunchy. Pathfinder and stuff is like that's the real crunch there. It's crazy. So brutal. Very mechanically heavy. That one might be a little stressful as Jerry's first.
Yeah, it's Jerry's first. I think Numenera, especially if he can do what he wants his story to be in Numenera, then I'm sure he'll be cool with it.
And I mean, there's other...
But again, I'm speaking for someone. I have no idea what he'll say.
Well, he wants to do it. I think it's just getting him feeling comfortable and enough to like do it and not know what he's doing. Right. I fail.
Or maybe he'll just do it in 5e and just adapt it.
Yeah, I mean, 5e is super flexible. Like I feel really confident I could use that just to do reskin it as a sci-fi thing and add a few things and be fine. You know, get through it just fine. I don't remember what I was gonna say, but yeah, I think that'd be super cool to play that and have Jerry run it. Jerry. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. The cipher system is the mechanics behind Numenera, but there's other settings too. There's one called Strange, where there's all these weird pocket dimensions, and you're one of these people, and like it's like modern, but you have the ability to jump to these other dimensions. I think they include like places of fiction and stuff, which is super cool. And so there might be some other ones if Jerry wants to get weird with it. That there might be some good options where he doesn't have to do as much upfront work for it, you know? So that's cool. Jerry, if you're listening, do it. Just do it.
Do it.
Do it, Jerry. Do it.
It's gonna be.
This is fucking do it.
It'd be awesome. I bet you, it'll either be Shay or Jerry that goes after you, after Bardstar.
Oh yeah. I think so. Unless John is done with his homebrew, we'll see how long it takes him.
His homebrew's before Bardstar, remember?
Oh, because we're going to do Forged and then John's homebrew and then Bardstar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sweet.
Right. And Forged should be done by the beginning of next year or the end of this year.
I mean, we better start playing soon.
It only will need a handful of sessions in a row to...
Unless we mutiny and we just stay as our memory characters that we're playing right now.
Yeah, that could happen.
And then like, I didn't anticipate that.
No, I mean, if everyone loves it, then we'll just be like, well, my time has come to a close. John's ready, so we'll end it.
You could also say, hey, you know what? This is the end of part 1. Like, we'll come back to this at some point, but we've ended like this thing. And, you know, we can always come back to it later. Kind of thing. Right. So you don't have to make it like, this is over.
It's over. Fuck it all.
I hate you all. No, I'm just kidding.
You know me. I'll just burn everything to the ground.
Don't
anyway,
burn everything to the ground.
It's easy. I'll get another idea. It's fine.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing that says that. I think it's fun to build, excuse me, different campaign worlds too. Like try to stretch your brain. I think that's fun.
I get sucked into the tiny minutia that make me go crazy.
Yeah, you have to be careful. You can get too detailed about it, and then you're like, I feel like I've done nothing but I made this really detailed table. I have that to show for it.
I got this really cool house with these people.
It's really detailed. I know where all the furniture is. I know how much food they have in the larder.
I know how much everything. I know all of their lives, their families' lives,
family history, here, family tree, dating back. What's the rest
of the city like? That's when their brain just melts.
I haven't got there yet. Oh shit!
Yeah, it's hard not to get stuck on those things to let go of. Just creating a base, like just something for the players to get through.
Right. Well, it's kind of like writing a song, like the. Way that generally you're going to have more fun doing it is you kind of make the broad thing. So like, I want a city for my campaign setting. Okay, what's the broad stroke of the city? Oh, and then you go a little deeper, you add some detail and you cinch it up a little more. And then you add a little more detail. And then you make like the crazy detailed house. Because you have everything else is kind of, the context for it. Mm-hmm. Doesn't always work that way inspirationally, but that tends to be a little less stressful and like, I want to burn everything,
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, you
That's
ready for the
great.
next topic?
No,
You better be.
I'm not done talking
fucking-
about.
Fine.
I'm not done
Do it,
talking about
You son of a bitch.
movies. Movies.
It took you a little too long. It's like half a second
I was
pause.
just trying to think of a
I know.
word.
Think of something.
Yeah,
You want to talk about
which one?
types of sod?
I want
Maybe?
to talk about homemade sausage. Have you ever?
Do you want to see how the sausage is made?
Have you ever made your own sausage and
At
made
home?
the links and with the skin and pushed it in? I don't.
Intestinal skin.
It's all weird.
Delicious.
Wow.
Okay. Anyways, those were horrifying. So next topic. What would we like to see more of in D&D? Again, just personal. It's not like, here's the truth. It's just like, this is what Ian and I would like more of.
I would like to see more of everybody playing. Everybody.
Yeah, that's
all
cool.
walks of life. I would love more of that. People that are like, I've never played and I don't really care. Well, you should play then. Because that you should try because it's fun.
And it would be really fun to see people who don't really they're not in love with like the culture of D&D, like take D&D and do something totally unique with it too.
Right.
Like you like do your own thing. You're like, this is stupid. I'm doing this. Sweet. I want to see that game, you know?
Yeah. I want to see some of our friends that have never played anything and are almost like they don't really care to play. I want to see you play.
Right.
Doesn't mean I want to DM you playing, but I want to see you play. I think that would be fun.
Right. Well, I mean, Ian and I are of the opinion that RPGs are good for you. It's like reading. Like it's another thing that will bring joy to your life. It's a lot of fun to do. So you should do it if you want to DM or, you know, try it out. It'll be good for your life. I think you don't have to get obsessed with it, but do it.
I know that Eric's real question was not that.
No, that was a good one. That actually like that's totally fine. That's outside of what I was thinking, but that's great. That's a really good point. One of mine, we'll just go back and forth. One of mine is I'd love to see 5th edition versions of the classic campaign world. So Faerun is the one that's really kind of the standard for this edition. And every edition, so ever since the beginning, they usually have a world that's like, here's the main world we're going to write everything for, but you can use whatever world you want. You can make up your own. You can use these others. So they've come out with some. There's a Ravenloft, which is kind of the horror domains of dread area. I've mentioned the vampire Strahd. He comes from Ravenloft. He's kind of the big bad, or he's Dracula for D&D, basically. The D&D Dracula. But man, he is scary. Yeah. Ian's playing Ravenloft campaign. It's what, once a month, something like that?
It's just whenever we can. If we can get, it's just if they can do 2 in a month, they would.
That's cool.
It seems to be about once a month. Shout out to the Cody crew.
Shout out to
if they're
Cody.
listening. Cody, I think Cody listens sometimes. Maybe some of them do. I don't know yet. But yeah, man, it's a lot of fun with with that whole group. I like them a lot.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah, just like we've said, everybody DMs differently, and it's fun. So the group I'm with, they're very fun. The DM is fun. I've known the DM since I was 2 years old.
It's a long time.
And I'm almost 40 now. So he is besides my family, he is the person I have known the longest in my entire life. He is also the person that introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy when we were young.
That's pretty sweet. Now, how long has he been DMing just generally, like ballpark?
20 plus years.
So what is it? And if there is like you said, everybody has their own way of doing it, but do you notice a difference just like maybe comfort level? Like, can you tell that he's
100%.
been doing it for a long time?
Oh yeah.
That's cool.
Definitely.
Nice.
It's very evident that he is able to fly by the seat of his pants in the game because he knows the game mechanics and he also knows the campaign setting because he's run them. So he's familiar with kind of the basic workings of that whole thing. So you can tell that he could just kind of be like, in his mind, he's like, this is what I'm going to have him kind of do.
Mm-hmm.
And he can keep that there and just be comfortable in that place because he's just done it.
Right.
So yeah, and it feels very loose, and not like loose in a bad way at all. It just feels very, comfortable and in the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
This feels in the pocket.
In the pocket, nice. So we were taught, I can't remember which episode it was. I think 3. We talked about the getting a master's degree, like we go through the hypothetical. But it seems like some of that stuff we talked about kind of maybe applies to him, where he's ran so many scenarios. He kind of has a repertoire of stuff to just pull out, and he's got the table time and he's got the fluency of the game. And so that'd be cool to get his opinion on stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I've asked him if he'll come on here, and he said, yeah, for sure.
Hell yeah.
He's a published author.
Oh, nice.
He has a publishing company now, I believe. I don't want to misquote it, but maybe we'll give him a shout out in the doobly doos.
Oh, if you give me the stuff, I'll absolutely put in the thing, and we'll go check his stuff out. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of scary stuff. He's very fantasy horror.
Nice.
He's the person who first showed me scary movies when I was young. Scared the shit out of me.
So he was your gateway to trauma. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, dude. Sadly, in front of this person, I have cried from being so scared as a child. Was a very sensitive kid growing up.
Well, plus you've known him since you were 2. I mean, crying openly.
We grew up together, like a lot of those younger years, like years and years and years. He's the one who introduced me to Drizzt. He's everything. Dragonlance, Metallica, growing my hair long.
Nice.
All influenced by that kid.
Gotcha.
And that was, I started that world and then met you, not but a year later.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, he's that kind of his style. It's just fun, man. So like a lot gets done in each session. So it's a few hours, a lot of things get done, the story moves, the combat happens. It's nice, man.
That's cool.
Yeah, and the party is super wild. They're unique. People, characters have already died before I got there. So it's a very, like, if you die, you just roll a new character.
Nice.
We just bring you in. We figure out a way to do it.
That's the way to do it.
And I was like, oh, I love that. Yeah. That's a lot of fun. I do want to bring up some really fun things that he does real quick, just in D&D.
Sure.
He uses these cards that you can buy for critical hits and critical fails.
Oh, yeah.
So when you roll a 20 or a 1, and there's a different deck for the players and a different deck for the bad guys.
Oh, really? So it's like an NPC deck and a PC deck kind of thing?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And they're super weird, man. Like a lot of the time, like the way it works is like the crit will do full damage from one dice roll, and then you roll the dice again, and then you add that onto it. So your crits they're very wild. So like one of them that I heard him do was like rolled the damage 4 times.
Wow.
There was the NPC ones are different. It's not like that. It usually does something to your character. Like a lot of them are like wounds, like you scar. So it physically changes your character.
Right. That's cool. I like that.
And I loved that because like somebody took a claw down the face. I think it was my character.
Nice.
And it was a crit, and he pulled one. It's like that scar stays forever. That's you need to mark that down that you're scarred. And I was like, that's awesome.
That's really cool. I wonder if you can get those in Roll20, because I'd totally buy those for games.
We should check, because
they
for sure.
They do have the deck mechanic. I've never really used it, but in the back end, you can have a deck of cards.
Yeah, because if you could, dude, I'm telling you, there's so much fun. That sounds so fun.
Like, especially the scarring and kind of like changing you physically kind of reminds me of Fable in a little way,
Oh, yeah. Super cool. It's such a great game. Anyone that's Shout out to Fable.
Shout out to Fable. Not 3
Fable
though.
1.
Number 2. 2 is the best.
1 was good too.
1 was good. It was good for what it was, and then
good.
2 was kind of like, yeah, this is getting better, and then 3 was like, what happened?
What did you do?
Why did you do that?
Yeah,
Did
I still
something.
enjoyed playing it, but it didn't feel like what Fable was.
It was
felt
still
like
fun,
just a game.
but it just felt like this sim game with a Fable skin almost. Like you're like you're trying to get people to like lovers had a quarrel, so you're trying to get them to make up and shit, and you have all these gestures. It's like, what? I want to go questing. What is this? Am I on The Bachelor? What's going on?
When you played Fable, the first one, what version did you play?
So I got it not right when it came out, but I got it shortly after because I didn't have an Xbox because that's what it came out on. My computer's about to run out of batteries. Oh no. So I got the original version, like not with any of the extra stuff.
So did you ever get to play the extra stuff?
I think so. I didn't play it all the way through, but because I think I had it and then I didn't, and then I got it again or something. Like I bought a used copy, and I think I had the Game of the Year edition or whatever, like with all the extra stuff.
The Lost Chapters or something?
The Lost Chapters, that's right.
Fable.
Yeah, and I remember you having it a whole bunch too. Like I remember always seeing it.
So I loved the original game, but I also was like, just like you, was like, cool. Wasn't what you promised, but it was still fun.
It was still fun. Yeah.
But then Lost Chapters dropped, and all of the stuff that they put in there, I was like, this feels more like close to what you were promising. Not with the amount of crazy shit, but there was you fight a dragon in it. It's much more
kind of fantasy.
There was much bigger things added to it.
Gotcha.
That I was like, okay, this feels more rounded now. Rather than just at the end, I shot that guy with the bow a bunch and I won the game. I was like, that's stupid.
The Jack of what was his name? Jack of Blades.
Jack of Knives. Jack of Blades. Whatever his name was.
Yeah, it was kind of anticlimactic, and then you didn't get the cool thing if you didn't wait all through the credits. I remember that was super boring. Just like, what?
So in Lost Chapters, Jack's not the boss.
Oh, he's not.
No, you defeat him, and it turns out that there's a bigger.
Oh, so they kind of retcon it, saying actually, there's this other thing. That's cool.
Then it's a dragon in the end, and the fight is way harder.
Always scapegoating the dragons, man.
Well, and you get like a good chunk of game, not good, but you get a good 4 or 5 more hours of story game after Jack.
That's
and
cool.
Then there was a bunch of stuff added through the game.
Nice.
There was a little bit more depth, a little bit more weapons, a little bit more this, more choices to make you look evil and good.
Man, I freaking love the vibe of that world. That's the thing, is like, I'd love to play like a D&D campaign in that, but really lean into like the evil and good, like make kind of use alignments to make the sliding scale and like how your appearance changes and stuff. I love that vibe. It's so cool.
That'd be interesting to even allow the characters, like use D&D 5e, but allow the characters as they level up to like take wizard, rogue, or fighter stuff, so they can like shape their character and have the real thing that they're doing, because they can just go get quests like in Fable, but the real thing is when they go to town, like the off time and socialize.
Downtime.
And have it like have the things they do affect what they look like. So by the end, or as you keep playing, some characters that are in the party look evil, some look good, some look normal.
But staying normal is really hard to do. I would make that hard.
Yeah,
so like
you have to make choice.
You have to make neutral choices the whole time, essentially. You know, so that would be super fun, because that game has such a kind of classic, almost fairy tale feel to the world, which I just fucking love. And I love how each game would progress in time a little bit. So things you got more of the French Revolution vibe after a while, and it was cool. What was the name of the place? Albion?
Game. Albion, yeah.
Which I think is what they used to call England back in the day. Yeah, it's a cool name. Man.
So there is, we've talked on our first episode.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about communication,
Mm-hmm.
and you say the word communion,
Mm-hmm.
and I heard that, and I had to come back to it,
Right.
because I'm pretty sure that's what it's called, like in Catholic Church
When you take communion. Yeah.
Yeah,
It is
and
a
so that's
religious.
when I was like,
Yeah.
when you said that word a long time ago, I was like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
word in something.
Yeah. So
But I think that even
go ahead. I'm
that
sorry.
word means to join.
To join together. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's still like the whole thing. I know that that's weird for me to bring that
No,
up, but
that's fine.
it's a thought I had, and I was like, oh yeah, you just reminded me.
Mm-hmm. And well, you also have like communes, which has a negative connotation. Same root, same etymological root.
Yeah.
I like looking at etymology because you can make new connections with words without just being completely crazy. Just like, oh, communication is about bringing. You could really, I'm interpreting it, but you could really say it's about bringing people together, bringing them on the same wavelength. So your communication is better if you're doing that. If you're bringing people apart, you're not really communicating, you're separating.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a good framework for what are we actually doing when we use these mouth sounds that we attribute truth to, So,
Well, no, sorry.
No, go
Flashback
ahead.
to
Go ahead.
Albion.
Albion.
No, flashback to Albion and Fable.
Fable.
It's
pronounced Fable.
rumor that there's a Fable.
Fable.
There's a rumor there's a new Fable.
Oh, please let
in
there
the
be a new
works.
one. Let it be everything we've always wanted.
But
Please.
it's not being done by Lionhead because they're
gone. That's probably best because they made a lot of
man,
promises.
I loved Black and White though.
I always wanted to play it.
So great.
I never got to play it.
For
That's not
anyone
true. I
that
got to
doesn't
play
know.
Harley's computer, our friend Harley, one time, but it wasn't enough time to learn what I was doing. It's like I have no idea
Oh
what's
yeah,
happening.
because that's anyone that doesn't know, Black and White is a very old game, and in the game you're God, and you are in charge of this little budding civilization, and it's almost like the archetype of what Fable would come to be in a different way, because it was
Choices matter.
choices. Yeah, you as a god, you could choose to be benevolent or malevolent,
Mm-hmm.
and you would get this like avatar, this weird animal that was kind of like your presence,
Mm-hmm.
your physical presence
Yeah,
in there,
and they
the
were
little villagers
giant.
world. Yeah, there was a huge animal.
That was what caught
And
me
the-
when I saw it. I was like, that's fucking cool. I like that
And
a lot.
you train it with these different leashes
Mm-hmm.
to do different things for the villagers, and the villagers, they, it's kind of like a Sims game where they harvest things, they
Mm-hmm.
farm, and you build their civilization up. And, if you're an evil god, they have to do sacrifices to you. And it's a whole crazy thing,
Mm-hmm.
man. But I loved that game. It's just super fun to really, because it's hard to be a good god, because things happen and some of the little people are bad, and what do you do? And sometimes your animal just eats somebody, and then the people get sad, and
I forgot about that.
Sometimes you're clicking around and you grab somebody accidentally and you throw them across the world, and they're
Throw
gone.
them into the ocean. They're done.
Yeah, they're gone. They're
Bye.
done. And you're like, oh, and then they go, the people get sad.
They're like, our God
And-
isn't as good as we thought.
Yeah. And you expand your kingdom until you've taken over this whole island.
Mm-hmm.
And truth be told, I couldn't even grow my civilization to get that big. They would start to get upset I got a decent way in, and I suck.
That's when that happens in every video game where you're like, okay, my understanding of this game needs to go up because the game is displeased.
Stuck.
I'm not able
I
to
am
get past
stuck.
this.
They
What's
just
happening?
keep getting sad and mad, and I give them what they want, and then it doesn't help, and it's a whole
They don't
thing.
actually want what they want. When they say they want, they don't want it.
But that's a good analogy for being the DM almost.
It is. Yep.
You're trying to do this and trying to do that.
Your players don't really want what they say they want, but they still want some of it sometimes.
It's wild.
Somewhat.
It's wild times. Super fun.
In Black and White, couldn't you pick like one of three different avatars? Like there was a bull and a lion,
Tiger,
a tiger. Was there more than that?
and a baboon or a monkey-like creature.
It was cool. It was very stylized and cool graphically too for its time. Like it wasn't
for its time, it was like
being hyper realistic. It was like more cartoony and stylized. It was super cool.
Yeah, and that's when you look at Fable, it looks like the advancement of that same look.
Kind of cartoony a little bit, but still dark and for adults.
Stylized.
Yeah, stylized. Yeah, that's what sold me. It was kind of like when I saw the first trailer I ever saw for Final Fantasy VII, like when it first dropped, was like life-changing. Seeing the Fable trailer like a year before it dropped, same thing. I think I was with the same friend we were with. It was me, you, and another one of our friends in the mall, but this time it was just me and him in the mall again, and suddenly we see this trailer for this game called Fable. I was like, what the fuck? I have to play that game. Like,
now, let us transport you folks that are listening to 1995 or something.
Are we talking about when 7 dropped?
Just right at that time era.
Yeah,
Was it 97?
97, yeah.
So there's no YouTube. There's TV commercials.
Internet's is a very slow thing that you only get on if you really need to. Like, it's not,
and
not everybody's
if you
getting
even
on.
have it,
Yeah.
Using a modem, you're only on there for extremely important things, like
Pages take forever to load.
You had to do or something.
Yeah. Google wasn't really Google, like Yahoo was
there was
just,
no Google.
I remember, I think I always used Yahoo
to
search.
Funny. Yeah. America Online was a big deal back then.
AOL.
So
imagine, if you will,
you would walk by the video game store, and there were all these screens constantly playing like the
upcoming
new video games.
Yeah, it was GameStop.
So that was where
too.
you had to go. Yeah, there was no GameStop, at least not here.
I'm pretty sure it was GameStop.
No, it was.
Was it Babbage's?
Babbage's was one. There was a Software Etc. There was a.
I think there was only one in the mall, though. I think it was. If it wasn't GameStop, I think it was Babbage's.
Yeah, GameStop didn't come around until the Provo Mall.
Oh, that's the mall we were in. Was in the Provo Mall.
Oh, then yeah, you might have, because I'm thinking of the Orem Mall.
Orem Mall. Maybe it's been a while. No, I was thinking of the Orem Mall. I'm totally wrong.
Yeah,
totally wrong.
That's what I thought. Because we were a bit older when the Provo Mall opened.
When that opened. I remember thinking it was so cool. It's like, we're finally getting another mall.
Right.
We're moving up in the world.
Mall. Yeah, y'all gotta understand, Utah back in the 90s, we weren't.
It was a sad place.
Salt Lake is like a known thing now because this was before the Olympics. This was Utah. Nobody knew what it was. It was like this secret place that people filmed movies here sometimes.
And we were in Utah Valley.
Yeah, super weird there.
Yeah.
But to go back to Final Fantasy VII is where I was bringing this back to. I'd like to talk about how big that game and the storyline.
It was like the Star Wars of games. Like, it changed everything.
Yeah, it was
so
RPGs,
crazy.
man.
Yeah. That really put like JRPGs front and center in like gamer culture. Gamer culture still wasn't like what it is now, but it's really started to kind of spill over. I feel like that was one of the first
that game
times.
It's like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of. It's got all of the elements
Epic
of
Story.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep.
People wait their turn. You select things to do. You have resources you're managing. The bad guys take a turn. Yeah. There's like a whole initiative thing happening. It's just behind the scenes, so
it's just bars filling up instead of you rolling dice. You wait for the bar to fill up, and then you're like, okay, I have these actions I can do. So it's almost like
your damage.
It's almost like chess more than I would say D&D, because it's more about you have these pieces which can do certain things, but your chess pieces level up, though. They get crazy.
Oh yeah, they level up and get new abilities.
Yeah.
So there's a whole strategy to it. Like, your damage isn't like, oh, it did 7 each time. It's got like a random variable to it.
Sometimes you get criticals.
Yep. There's that game was pivotal in the video game world. It was shattering what that game did. to the.
Especially the graphics, like not the play graphics, but the cutscenes were like,
Oh, back then it was, what is happening? It'll never be this good.
Yep.
And game graphics now are a billion times what that was.
Everything looks like cutscene, like better than cutscenes from back then. I remember us thinking about, man, can you imagine when games just look like a cutscene all the time?
Yeah.
That's like every game now. It's insane.
That's what's so crazy is how, and again, this is almost like a D&D thing. Final Fantasy VII, when it dropped, it bridged so many different groups of people. I mean,
for sure.
So many of our friends played that game.
And we all played it when it came out, so it was like a communal thing for us.
Yeah,
we all got to
we would be
it.
like, oh, what part are you at? And be like, oh, I'm this far into it. Oh, Jerry's on disc 3.
And I had the
what?
manuals.
How did you get to disc 3?
I had the manuals, so
Eric
people
had all
would
the strategy
call me
guides.
all the time, like, hey, how do I beat this part? I'm like, hold on. Then it's fucking page 52.
It was a wild time, but the story that game has in it is huge. It's epic. It's
also like that was like our generation's like Shakespearean epic, or like the Odyssey. Like it really was that big for us. Like the betrayal and like everything's very over the top, but not in a way that it's not like Byzantine or Baroque. It's not very shiny, but it's as epic as it gets. You know, it's crazy.
It's this betrayal, the story of the enemy, the arch enemy doing this thing, and you become the saviors of the world through the power of the planet.
You know what I just thought of?
What?
Just thinking of that quote from Princess Bride. Fencing, fighting, chases, escapes, true love. Like, it's Final Fantasy VII too. Oh my God.
It's got everything.
It's got everything,
it
man.
Seriously does. It has, it has like a Las Vegas type place where you go and play games and earn money, and you can go and do chocobos, these bird creatures. You can go breed them and race them. And
there's a whole cross-dressing section where Cloud gets in touch with his sexuality. The remake, I friggin' loved that part. It was amazing. So I was laughing the whole time. It was so good.
I still have not beat the remake.
I haven't beat it either. Like I
want part 2.
Well, I'm pissed about the one they released on PS5 with like the whole Yuffie thing.
Oh, with Yuffie, yeah.
That makes me upset. So I'm like, you know what? I don't feel like playing this game right now. I'll play it later when like I have access to the whole thing, you know, or part 2 comes out. I'll get ready for that or something. But I'm just like, man, it's really good though. It's not that I didn't like it.
Yeah. Oh, I played it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love it.
I got
it's
to
fun.
Where you're going up. The village is in trouble and you're running up the tower, and then you fight the big machine, and then you run back down. So it's kind of, I think that's towards the end of part 1, because they're getting pretty close to leaving, because they leave the city. I know after that. Really fun. Really, really good.
And I remember growing up when we played Final Fantasy VII. So it starts you in this city. And you play for a long time.
Midgar.
Yeah, you play for a long time, and none of us realized until it happened that, you know, we played for like 10, 12 hours, and getting out of Midgar was like nothing.
That was the prologue.
In the games. Yeah, it was like the very...
That felt like
the prologue
game.
to
You're
the
like, oh, this is the game. This is cool, steampunky. And then suddenly you leave the city, the walled city, and there's this huge world to explore. And you're like, what? Excuse me?
It's huge.
Yeah. Sweet.
And I'm going to go into that, because that's going to lead me to, again, another RPG. Because that's what we talk about, is stories and RPGs.
We like to nerd out here on the Philomythia podcast.
Yeah. But I'm going to talk about my favorite video game of all time.
I think I know what you're going to say right now.
Oh, I know you know what I'm going to say.
I think I know.
Let's see if you know. Tell me what you think it is.
I think that, I'm not going to say the name, but I think it starts off as a fantasy, but it's got time travel. The main character.
It's Chrono Trigger for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now you said it, so I had a whole speech planned, but you ruined it. No, it's too late.
Sorry.
It's too late. Just talk about it.
Yeah,
Just talk about it.
Chrono Trigger. And I was introduced to this game by none other than the person sitting right there.
Oh, was it
Eric
me?
Blood.
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely. I'd never even known what that game was. Hung out with you in your room.
because I was borrowing it from Charlie. I never owned that game because that game was expensive.
And watching you play it. And you also had Final Fantasy VI up there.
Mm-hmm.
And I had hung out with one of our other friends, mutual friend, before I met you because I had come to the school. And this person was the first person that like just started talking to me. And he told me all about you.
Right.
And how me and you were going to be friends. Because we were so similar. He's like, oh yeah, you and Eric are going to be friends, man.
We're both
Eric's
nerds.
so cool.
Both nerds.
And then it was the next day, went to school. And he introduced me and you.
Right.
And I was like, oh, yeah, I live up the street. And you're like, oh, sweet, dude. And then you invited me to your room and we went up there and you're like, and I was like, you something about Final Fantasy. And you were like, yeah. And then showed me that. And then you're like, oh, and then there's Chrono Trigger.
Right.
Showed me that. And I was like, watching that game sucked in.
Yeah.
I was like, what is this?
Right.
The graphics were so cool. The what your characters were so cool. And then finally I got to play it. And it was that same copy that I got to play.
Right.
Charlie's copy.
The one copy that was passed around.
Yeah. And it was the same Super Nintendo probably as somebody's.
Probably. Yeah.
Letting me play it. And man, I loved that game. The story is one of my favorite stories ever.
It's cool.
Chrono starts out as just this kid and goes to the fair, meets a girl, and the girl's cute. And then some shit goes down at his buddy's science booth and she disappears or gets sucked into a portal.
Right.
And you're like, oh shit. And your friend is like, buddy, you need to go after her. And you're like, huh? How we can get the portal open again and you can jump through. And you're like, huh? And then the portal opens and it's like, okay, here we go. And then you get sucked into the portal and it sends you hurtling through time.
Right.
And it unlocks this story of ancestry that you have to like, even just thinking about it, dude, my heart is like, I can feel it like swelling with love because I love how Guardia, like you're protecting the Guardia lineage, basically, King Guardia. And the bad guys have like snatched her in the past and kill her in the past. So the future gets affected. So you have to fix it in the past because you're there at that same time with them. And then once you like stop that, you try to go home and something else happens and
back to the future situation. You're like, I solved it. And you go home and you're like, no, everything's fucked.
Now there's like a new whole problem because like the judge is out of control. That's the whole court system part where you go to jail.
I remember that.
Yeah, dude. And it just devolves from there where this one simple change in time and it starts this adventure through you and your characters. And I'm going to spoiler alert everybody right now.
So big spoiler alert. If you want to play it, you might want to skip this part.
Turn this off right now.
Skip the rest of this chapter.
To say some shit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, your character dies. You have to use time to bring him back. You get a time machine.
That's true. You go to the future. You go to like full sci-fi.
Yeah. And then you also go to the past where magic existed.
And dinosaurs.
And you get magic. You go to the end of time where you meet this guru. And then as you play, it seems like you don't know who the villain is or what's going on. And it seems like it's this one character named Magus or Magus, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah, Magus.
And then you find out it's not. It's Lavos.
Oh, that's right. Lavos is the BBEG.
The big bad, yeah. And Lavos has been there since way in the past because it was that meteor from like 65 million BC or whatever.
Squaresoft and their meteors. They fucking love the meteor trope. They
comes down and hits the ground and burrows deep into the planet. And then comes out later in the future. So it's this whole time travel epic story.
That's really awesome.
Is seriously one of my favorite things ever. And could you imagine being able to create that as almost like a Dungeons and Dragons experience if it didn't exist?
Right.
If the video game didn't exist, creating that story and a way to get those choices, and the players do all of this stuff, because there's heartbreak throughout it. There's each character that you pick up along the way has some storyline as the main storyline that you have to complete. And then you have to complete another one later that has to do with their past or something. And there's so many fun experiences in that game. It's no wonder it was like $80 back in the 90s.
And it never dropped in price. It was always, it's always been that. And it's definitely worth the price. I really loved how the beginning feels so classic. Like it feels like a classic fantasy. And then suddenly you twist it with this whole time travel, like, that whole almost a sci-fi trope, but you've thrown it into a fantasy setting. So it gives it this whole different flavor, which is really awesome. And it looks like all the art, it looks like an anime. So if you love like Japanese culture and anime, it has that extra layer of awesomeness to it,
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah.
And I'm sure anyone who's listening has probably played it or knows about it.
They're like, yeah, we know how good it is. Okay. You guys don't
we
have to
know.
talk about
Okay,
it.
shut up.
Fucking piece of shit.
I used to, when I had a Super Nintendo, I would literally play that game every year and beat the whole thing at least once a year.
Nice.
Because it's serious. It's my favorite video game ever.
It's awesome.
It's so great.
Yeah.
I have such fond memories of I could still even remember the first time I turned the game on and just played it all day for 2 days, like all day into the night, went to bed, woke up and started playing and beat the whole game in like 48 hours.
Yep. Do a playthrough.
Like, so good.
I remember I loved the world map music, so I would intentionally leave my game on and sleep to that because it was like super cozy and comforting.
Is that the dun, 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 dun,
yeah.
Yeah.
That part. It's so awesome.
That is one of the best songs ever.
Yeah, it's so moody, and we definitely have to do a video game episode, like music episode. It's pretty soon.
Oh, and talk about a bunch of. Oh, we should have Jerry with us.
Yeah, we should throw Jerry on here. We're gonna try to get him to run a one shot for us too. We'll see.
Yeah, for
how
sure.
He reacts
but we
to
should
that.
also, when we do like video game music, get him in here because that's his love, man.
Well, and
that's his jam.
He's basically writing a bunch of video game music right now. Not for a video game. He's just writing all this badass music and like creating stories to it. It's really cool.
His SoundCloud's in the doobly doo. Go check it out.
It is, and like we've said, he does our music. I mean, what you're hearing is a tiny snippet of one song out of, I think since COVID started, he's written. It has to be over like 100 songs. It's tons. It's a lot
he's got
of
so
songs.
many songs now.
Yeah, it's really cool.
They're just great, man.
Yeah,
he's so great.
He's a very talented young man. He's very talented.
Indeed.
So we're almost out of time, but let's just go through these. So Chrono Trigger, if you haven't played it, I would check it out. I think you can, I'm going to say this, it's not strictly legal, but you can play like emulators on your computer and play it if it's, because it's not terribly available.
Oh, and you can get it on Apple iOS if you have an iPhone.
Oh, can you? There you go. Yeah.
And I think you might even be able to get it on Droid as well. You can get it from app stores and play it.
There you go. You can do that. Is it on PS4? Did they release for that?
It's not on the 4. No,
that's a bummer.
Yeah, it
you
was.
can play Final Fantasy
you were able to
which
do
is
it.
one of my favorites.
You were able to do it on like the. I think it was the PlayStation 3. They had a way for you to play.
Right, that's right.
PlayStation 1 games because they released it on PlayStation 1.
Yeah, I remember that because you would play it. I think I remember you playing that one on PS3.
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally. I think that's what I evolved to after the Super Nintendo went away.
Yeah. So
I got it that way.
That's a good one to check out. Again, like the story is really good, and Squaresoft, especially back in the 90s, I feel like as far as video games went, there were no better storytellers in all video games, in my opinion. Like they told,
and this is before Square Enix, by the way.
This is just Squaresoft, where like you had to wait for years to get like the new hotness from Japan. Like it didn't come out. It wasn't simultaneously released. So it was like
we had to wait forever.
We would whisper about games we heard
out.
about, like, oh, there's this new, they're coming out with a new RPG series. Like, oh, it's going to be good.
Oh, they got Final Fantasy VII in Japan last year.
Yep. Final Fantasy VI was called Final Fantasy III in America because they confused their buyers by trying to make it less confusing because they didn't release all the Final Fantasies consecutively here. It's ridiculous. It's silly. Yeah. It's very silly. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up what we'd like to see more of in D&D, and then we'll do the fuck out of here. So I would say better reference design for the core books. And what I mean by that is if it's like referring to this thing that's on another page, instead of having to go to the index, it says on the side, go to this page to read this. Like that would be very helpful. Nice. Yeah. That's like Numenera. Those books do it. There's some other books where they have really good reference for when you need to just look up something quick. This is more vague. I would love to see more class flexibility in the subclasses. So not just more subclasses, but being able to take different options, like being able to kind of mold your class the way you're thinking of for your character. I think it would be a lot of fun. I don't know mechanically how you do that. Maybe 5e is the wrong thing for that, but.
Well, that's what you're talking about from what I've read about, like 3.5 has a lot more flexibility like that.
Yeah. And a lot of times when I have these thoughts, I then find out that 3.5, that's what they had. Yeah. Right. So that's when you do that, you make it crunchier, essentially. I would love, this is going to sound like a criticism. It's not a criticism, but an actual dungeon master's guide that was like, here's how you actually run sessions. Like, here's how you actually
like
kind of
step-by-step almost.
Step-by-step for people who, writing it with people who've never played in mind. Kind of like, I feel like the Player's Handbook's pretty good at doing that if you really just read the first section. I feel like the DMG, going back through it, the section should be flipped. So the last section should be first, which talks about the rules and running the game, and building the world should be last, because not everybody wants to build a campaign world like we talked about. Some people just want to run like a pre-made thing, So it's not completely cut and dry. You couldn't just flip the sections like that, but I think it would be helpful. My last one, every goddamn book needs an index. Every one of them. Not just some, all of them. They all need indexes. It makes me so upset.
Indexes are, that's weird. Why wouldn't you put an index in a book that's made for reference?
I've noticed a lot of the campaign books don't have indexes, and as well as I believe Xanathar's and Tasha's don't. And it's like, how am I supposed to reference this if I don't have the reference section? The section where literally like, oh, I need to find this thing. Oh, okay, it's on page 55 or whatever.
It's going to be so funny if some person tells us about how, that the reason they're not there is because printing shortages or some.
It could be, but I'm talking about you had books that had maps, tear out maps to put up like I have all over my walls, but no index.
Why not have an index then?
Yeah, and then some of the books don't have maps. Some of the books don't have maps, and they don't have indexes. So it seems random depending upon maybe who's running that book project. I don't know how it works, but that'd be because when you're planning, you have a lot of books open and you're just needing certain information from a lot of different sources. And so when you can't just easily find it, it makes planning much harder. Like really just like this is frustrating, So those are what I thought of. Did you have any things where you're like, I would like this. This would be cool.
Something I would like.
Mm-hmm. Besides an ice cream cone. Okay.
I don't want an ice cream cone.
Wizards isn't going to send you an ice cream cone. It's not happening.
It's okay. I don't want one. Don't like ice cream very much.
Mm-hmm. I do. I like it too much.
I know you love ice cream.
And pie. And donuts.
Shut up about pie. I love pie. Donuts are good.
cake.
Not a big sweets person.
Oh, I
Cake,
love
I
sweets.
could live or die without cake. I don't give a shit about it.
But see,
that
you need
much.
like either like French buttercream or like cream cheese frosting, like something good on the cake.
Well, see, I love a good cream cheese frosting.
I love a good cream cheese.
So things I would want from D&D
Mm-hmm.
in the books, I think, is what the
Just what you
maybe
want
it's
from
just
the
a
books.
general.
Just in general.
Oh.
Just anything that doesn't have to bother you, but like frustrates you or whatever. Like just I'd like, or something you want more of that you like. You know, doesn't have to be.
I would like. I don't know. That's a hard one for me because I'm like instantly jumping into like rather than being neutral about it, I'm jumping into like what would I want from my games I play more of. That's not really the question.
Well, I mean, you have to use those as like reference though, so it's not really a question of like people in the game though. It's just the system, I would say. So the rules or the ways the books are designed or whatever.
I would like a way for when you increase in level, as you get more powerful, some of your low level stuff increases with you.
Oh, that's a good one.
So some of the stuff doesn't get left behind. And if it is going to get left behind, replace it with something more powerful.
Right.
So,
right.
you know, your abilities don't all of a sudden be like are useless.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, oh,
I don't have any reason to use that anymore.
Right. And yet it's still here. It is.
Yeah.
And it was important this time, but now it's, you know, it was important levels 1 through 5, and now I don't use it.
Now I'm tier 3. I'm like level 14. Right. Like don't need any more.
So just a
makes
way
sense.
for that to kind of
That's cool.
to come up. I know they do it with cantrips a little bit.
Right. Some of the spells do that. Like you have different, as you get more spells levels, you can cast it at higher levels or
right.
Something
and
like
so
that.
stuff like that for like, and again, I bet you again, I think it's in 3.5.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
That's fine. But we like
5.
We like 5e. That's what we're talking about. Right
like leveling up your weapons.
right. Like having more of it's in Blades in the Dark. Like you can during downtime you can actually craft things.
Yeah, stuff like
so like
that.
recraft, like make your sword better. I mean, they do that in video games all the time. It wouldn't necessarily translate exactly, but
right. I don't see why you wouldn't have just a basic mechanic to increase something for.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool. I like Jerry had an idea that was cool because I've been trying to play with giving magic more flavor in game. Like I haven't really done anything with it for a while, but like, you know, you can feel or smell magic when somebody casts it. Like it's more visceral to the world, and it's something that's a little more intense. I think would be fun. Find a way to express that mechanically. But Jerry was like, that'd be cool if you had your basic spells that you could level them up after a while. So if you had a fire spell, like in Final Fantasy, you have fire, but then you can turn it into fire. So it becomes tougher. It becomes a more brutal version of the spell. Kind of like Pokemon, how they evolve, right?
Evolution.
Evolutions. That'd be cool, especially if magic is supposed to be a living thing, if you can kind of train your spells or something. Like they can get tougher and you can customize them almost like your sword or something. I don't know how you would do that, but that seems really fun conceptually.
I agree. That seems cool.
Yeah. We'll figure it out one day.
Well, 3.5 had that. Stop it.
Right. I keep hearing that if you want a really cool visceral magic system, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay is where it's at, apparently. I haven't played it, so I don't know.
Like, which, is it 3rd edition or 4th?
I think all of them. 4th is supposed to be, was it 3rd or 4th that was made by a different company? I think it was 3rd.
3rd.
So I think it's 2 and 4 that are the ones that people like. I could be really wrong. Maybe 3 is just as good. But I've heard 2 is where, like, that's the good stuff.
Isn't 4th edition Age of Sigmar? Isn't that what it is?
Yeah, because apparently when we were on the trip, we were at the nerd store. I think it was the day before you got into town. But one of the shopkeeps was saying, like, apparently Games Workshop shut down fantasy roleplay and made Age of Sigmar, so it kind of replaced it. I don't know enough about Sigmar to know how it replaced it, but I know, like, the world has progressed historically and some things are different. There's new armies, so I don't know if that affects the fantasy part of it or if it's just the battle part of it. I don't know. So, but I've looked through second edition manuals, and the magic is really interesting and kind of idiosyncratic. Like, it's not a well-ordered system. It feels more like folk magic in terms of, like, oh, you have this, and then you have this, and you have a couple other things, and you're like, wow, that doesn't really fit together. It's,
right.
you know, a little more like you would find in the real world, maybe, in terms of, like, folk traditions and stuff. So that'd be cool. But yeah, I think that's a good place to end. Do you have thoughts of parting?
This is the cliffhanger, so don't even respond to this.
Okay.
Not cliffhanger. Like, I'm not ending the episode yet. But this is the cliffhanger for that subject.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why they don't have a necromancer in the player's handbook. Seems like a missed opportunity.
Right.
But let's go to the doobly-doos.
I have thoughts on that.
We'll address that later.
We'll address that later. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. We'll talk about that later.
Well, if you've made it this long, you're a trooper. I personally like long form content, so we're just going to record stuff. You listen as long as you want. But if you stuck through it, you're awesome.
Good job.
Love you.
Maybe one day there'll be like prizes for people who listen till the end.
Right. You have to listen to the end to be part of the giveaway or some shit.
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah.
Or right in the middle. You'll never know where we'll do the giveaway, but
you have to listen to the whole thing to know. I don't know who's supposed to do the sign off this time. I think you should do it.
Okay. Well, here's the sign off.
Here it is.
Stay sweaty.
You heard it here, folks. We'll be here all week. Oh, hey, listeners, you've made it to the end. Give yourself a prize. Maybe a little cupcake or some coffee or hot chocolate, you know. This is the credits, and we have links to all the things. So check down below and you'll see things to the link tree, and the link tree links to the other links, and there's links to be had. Also, Jerry did our music. It's super badass. If you want to check out all his stuff, we have a link to that too. It's on SoundCloud. So remember to roll high and take a point of inspiration. Like, share, subscribe.